Yes, let's start with your Thai description.
This is a series of horsemen on the charge,
Okay.
cavalry charge. To show you closer.
Yes, yes. Oh, how intricate is that?
This is the sports tie of the 61 cavalry.
Okay.
The 61 cavalry, the only horse regiment in the world,
Hmm.
who still has horses, cavalry horses.
Hmm.
And it's a very famous regiment because comprised the state cavalry, the princely states of India. In Before we got our independence, during World War One and World War Two,
Hmm.
the princely states
Hmm.
supported the British Indian government
Okay.
for World War One and World War Two.
Hmm.
In World War One, there were three particular regiments of princely states.
Hmm.
One is the Mysore Lancers from Maharajah of Mysore,
Right.
and another was the Kachwa Horse from the Gujarat side of India, and there were other Lancers. Squadron is about 200 horses,
Hmm.
and they were formed into brigade. That means about 300 or 400 horsemen
Okay.
during Field Marshal Allenby, the then British commander in Palestine,
Okay.
who were trying to reconquer the Palestinians from the Ottoman Turks.
Okay.
In 1918, they crossed the Sinai Desert
Hmm.
and they captured Jerusalem,
Hmm.
and then they wanted to attack up the coast to a place called Haifa.
Hmm.
Have you been to Delhi? And there is a Teen Murti Marg where
Yes, yes, of course.
Jawaharlal Nehru used to live, and there is a monument outside the gates of the then Prime Minister's house and earlier the Commander in Chief in India's house called the Teen Murti.
Yes.
The three cavalrymen,
Yes.
they belonged to the same cavalry units which captured Haifa
Oh.
against the Turkish army, which was very well entrenched and which was very well defended. It's a mountainous area there. Haifa is on a bit of a height overlooking the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. And the plain that attacks them was fully covered by a series of lines of defenses by the Ottoman Turks.
Hmm.
And they had machine guns and they had artillery, they had ships in the Mediterranean was giving them gun support. And the question of attacking from the front was very difficult, and they knew the Indian cavalry was going to come and attack,
Hmm.
so they were all ready for them.
Hmm.
But the Indian cavalry, led by a number of young officers, went through the mountains toward the eastern side, which the Turks thought was not possible for horsemen. But
Okay.
Indian horsemen are very, very good
Hmm.
riders, have been so since ancient times, right from the days of the Mahabharata, if you like. And they are very good indeed, and their horses are very well trained. So they came through the mountainous side on the eastern side of Haifa, it's covered by jungle. And the Turks didn't have a defense on that side, so they did not expect an attack from there.
Hmm.
So they did outflanking movement from the eastern side and came to the flank
Hmm.
of the Turkish defenses and also to the rear and carried the day, killing hundreds and hundreds of Turks who had machine guns and weapons. These guys only were riding a cavalry horse with a sword,
Yeah.
a lance,
Uh,
and of course, a carbine, a small shooting weapon which you carry with one hand and try and shoot while you're at full gallop.
uh,
Not an easy one. So we carried the day, and this the Haifa Memorial. If you recollect, Prime Minister Mr. Modi had gone to visit Palestine. He's friendly with all those people, and it was the Haifa Day, so they took him to this Haifa Memorial, which is a memorial still maintained by the Indian. We
oh.
have an
Oh,
United
really?
Nations Indian contingent there. We have a cavalry squadron
Uh,
there. but they are now got armored cars and things. In those days, they had conquered this area under Lord Allenby, Field Marshal Lord Allenby's campaign, which captured Palestine from the Ottoman Turks, 1918, and very famous battle. They got a Victoria Cross and various other awards. Many of them were killed in action, but nonetheless they carried the day. So Prime Minister Modi also went and laid a wreath over there, and so did the Israeli Prime Minister.
Okay.
This is to this. Ever since 1918, because Palestine had been mostly destroyed in battle. Bethlehem, where Lord Jesus was born, Jerusalem, and Haifa itself, and many other large towns on the Mediterranean coast had been laid waste and more or less destroyed during the war. And they had no schools and colleges left. So India sent a number of teachers and professors saying that education is important.
Okay.
So yes, you can reconstruct your houses and things, but first you have to start universities and schools and colleges. And they sent teachers over there, right? Right since 1919 or so. And then education of Israelis and Palestinians has been organized by Indian school teachers and professors. The result is that much later in life, much after I had retired, when I was invited by the South India Education Society, run by the Kanchipuram Mutt,
Okay.
the Sri Lanka,
Yes. Yes.
this is money for free education of those who cannot pay. Of course, those who can pay for their school fees and their college fees, but otherwise you're free. And they select 4 or 5 people every year to give them some award. They asked me to come. And I met there an Israeli professor from Jerusalem who spoke with Tamil quotations and Sanskrit quotations in his talk. And he also did a few prayers, like the Gayatri Mantra, for instance, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha and all that. And then he came and sat down. I asked him, look, where did you learn all this? He says, I am part of the students who were taught by Indian professors when they did out their schools and colleges in Jerusalem and things. And every morning, even in Jerusalem University today, you have the students in the morning assembly saying some kirtan and the Lord's Prayer.
Seriously. Wow.
Yeah. So India is very well received there. And now the Lebanese people and the Palestinian people are very good people, very nice people. Most of our troops that have been there, even during World War II, when Israel was created, do tell me, some of them from my regiment, do tell me that they're very friendly people, very nice people. They're a mixed group. They are Christians and Muslims and all sorts of people. Very free in their way of living, and a democratic institution in Palestine to give everybody an equal chance in life.
Right.
But there's been a series of wars, as you know, and such is their luck that they have been subject to conflict.
Yes.
So, and still goes on, the fight between Israel and Palestine.
Yes.
Okay, that's that time. Now, we were talking about my having met Farouk Barkatram
Yes.
in Dehradun,
Yes.
and I was told that I had permission to write to her. And I also got an impression that she was not too impressed with the young man that she had met,
Okay.
because, she was doing her bachelor's in Isabella Thaban College in Lucknow, which is run by Christian nuns and things,
Okay.
and very highly educated people there. And I felt that more effort is required to sort of convince the lady. She was only about 17 or 18, and actually girls want to get a little more mature before they make these decisions. But I had made up my mind, and I must tell you, Nivedita, that I was a man who was very serious about the aspects of marital life.
Okay.
I did not believe in dalliance, as I said earlier. I believe that you have to stick to your marriage vows and have many children so that the world is a better place in accordance with the character and conduct of the children that you produce by your guidance. That first set of guidance to a child by the parents. Example of parents is what teaches children more than any school or university. And the conduct of the parents is very vital. You will appreciate that in the Hollywood system of movies, where you talk of love at first sight and people get married and they get divorced, I don't think they take life too seriously. It's more like getting married and then getting divorced with huge alimony, so that the women become richer and the men become poorer. Maybe because the men's earning power used to be always a little higher. It will equalize slowly, but if you recollect, in the olden days, even in America and Britain, the women did not even have a right to vote.
Right to vote, yes.
For example, in India, we got the right to vote of all citizens, men or women or in between, and also whether poor or rich.
Yes.
One man, one vote, or one woman, one vote. So it's the first past the post of the political parties that come into power. We were the first country in the world to do that, because everywhere else, even Britain gave the right to vote in 1956 or thereabouts. Same with America. They gave the right to vote much later than us. So the rights of women have been part of our constitution since 1947. Very great foresighted people we had who wrote our constitution, chaired by Ambedkar himself.
Yes.
And also the political leadership, whatever one might say, were very far thinking. And they studied the situation all over the world before deciding what the Constitution should say. And we all obey the Constitution. As you know, the military services, we are slaves. The Constitution, not to the political party in power. Because parties come and parties go. You get one party ruling today, another tomorrow, who have different views. But you'll notice that the military and the foreign policy of the country does not change, because that is to the advantage of the national endeavor, which is not necessarily the main point of argument between political parties. It's a question of kursi kiska hai, who grabs the chair. So the lady was in IT college, and I finished my leave. I had gone to Bombay for my leave. And my aunt over there, Amrit Kala Vasudeva, belonged to the famous Amritdhara family, married to my very brilliant mama, that's my mother's younger brother, Haridas Vasudeva, who was a very good businessman. He started insurance companies and even before partition. And then after partition, he came as a pauper from West Pakistan into India and started the whole thing again in Delhi and Bombay, radio businesses and insurance businesses, where he managed to give jobs to his other 3 or 4 brothers who were not doing that well in life. And he married this rich lady, who the inheritor of the Amritdhara fortune. You know what Amritdhara is? It's 7 essential oils.
Yes. Oh, I'm seeing this after a long time. I used to hear about this. I haven't seen this package. Yes.
Especially for stomach problems, you take a few drops.
Right.
Whatever it is, it just cures you. It's a very highly spirited medicine.
Right.
It's not easy to take. You have to take a teaspoon of sugar and put a few drops inside and eat it. Or put it in a bit of water and drink it up. And it burns your throat and everything. It's a very essential oil, 7 essential oil. The fellow who started it was selling it on the streets of pre-partition Lahore. And because it was so good, you know those Ved types, those Ayurvedic types on the street corner, when you halt at a, because the policeman had told you to stop, he says, buy my medicine, it will do good for you.
Yes.
He started with that humble area, and eventually became so rich that a whole street in Lahore was known as the Amridhara Street.
Oh,
And a whole set of buildings on one side, which extended for, I would say, about 30 yards. And it was in a big triangular with a huge area in between, 3 stories, with plenty of factories, and this production was all the herbs that go inside here. And he had a nationwide business
oh,
where he made a lot of money.
I didn't know Amritdhara had its origin in Lahore.
Yeah. So my uncle went in, he's a lucky chap, he went and married the rich girl. And she was one of the first BA, from Connect College in Lahore, which is a very famous ladies' college. And so we also used to write her name as Amrit Kala BA, at the bottom, because there were very, very few women who had that qualification. Anyway, I went there and stayed with my aunt, and she was very upset to know that I wanted to marry a girl from Jammu who was not of the Brahmin clan. They are Mahajans, which are the business community.
Okay, okay.
And her father was a Mirpuri Dogra. Mirpur is now gone into Pakistan side because it crossed the line of control.
Okay.
But they all had to run away from there and come to Jammu. But he was a doctor. He's a very good surgeon. He was the head of the KG medical college and superintendent in Lucknow. When he retired from there, he went to Jammu and he went into private practice in an old building of their family. And his wife, he had studied in England for his MBBS. And by the way, he had met my father in England because my father had gone there in the late 20s. And he met them there because he liked Indian food. So my father was already in the army with about 10 or 12 years service. And he had been sent to UK especially for further enhancing his medical knowledge. And he was there for 2-3 years. I was born there, by the way.
Yes.
They brought me back from there, my mother and he. And so he used to come to my mother's place to have Indian food. My mother was a strict vegetarian, but nonetheless, he liked the Indian food. He couldn't stomach the rather bland British diet. So he had met my father there. So when my father came to know that this is the chap whose daughter I'm getting interested in, he had met her, of course. He had taken her to a parade in the Indian Military Academy to impress her with the military style of smartness and discipline and so on. And he was very fond of her aunt, her mother's elder sister, Priya Bali, who had been the Lady Harding Medical College principal.
Right.
And who had retired.
Yeah.
So when Shrubi left, I decided to make my number with the aunt. In the cavalry, you say that you don't really have to go to the objective directly. The cavalry technique is go in a roundabout way.
Gotcha.
It's the strategy of the indirect approach.
Okay.
For instance, in battle, Nivedita, the infantry goes and fights, tussles with the enemy, and the artillery goes onto the battlefield, supporting them with a lot of weapons and guns. Like you see the mayhem that goes on in Ukraine. The old cavalry and now the tank corps, they like to keep away from all this. They go to a side or a flank and they go behind the enemy and play hell at the back, where the defenses are not very good. There are communications and command headquarters, and you sort of overrun them and freshen everybody there from the rear. But the main task has to be done by the infantry and the artillery. As Chanakya said, the job of the cavalry, Chanakya was 300 BC. He was the prime minister of the Maurya Empire. Iskandar, when Alexander attacked the country 300 BC, these are Buddhist people, but Buddhism was started in India 600 BC. So the Maurya Empire, the main power behind the king's fighting capability was Chanakya, the captain of the brains, the prime minister.
Yes.
When somebody asked him, you've got such large forces. By the way, this is Magadh. Magadh is now Bihar, right? The old Bihar at the end of the Ganga, before it enters Bengal, was the most powerful kingdom in northern India. I'm talking of 300 BC, right? They, in their turn, they had conquered more or less the whole of India. So they met Alexander's forces when he entered India from the northwest. He had managed to conquer what we would now call Afghanistan.
Right.
It was known as Gandhar. You remember in Mahabharata?
Kandahar.
The blind king's wife was
Yes,
Gandhari.
Kandahari.
She had a bandage on her eyes because her husband was blind. Very powerful woman. She belongs to Kandahar, that is Afghanistan, right? So very interesting. In those days, there were no borders. So it's a question of who got married to whom. Very powerful women from there. Anyway, uh, Alexander never proceeded much beyond the Indus itself because he managed to cross that and defeat Porus, who was a great king there. Many of the kings in India used to fight against each other, but with Chanakya's advice, Magad, the most powerful nation, men should make a coalition to face the foreign invader. But Chanakya advised him that he's got a pretty daughter. His governor that is left here in the western Punjab has a pretty daughter, so why don't you go and marry her? So he went and married her after, a little bit of, what shall I say, wooing. And with the result, we didn't have to fight. The Greek army just withdrew from there.
Right.
So the techniques of warfare are very interesting. Marriage is an interesting point of creating, burying the hatchet, as one would say.
Yes.
So anyway, I went and visited Priya Bali very often. She was very happy to see me. And I used to borrow my car, my father's car, and drive her up to Mussoorie for a holiday or give her coffee at Heckman's or something. I don't know if you've been to Mussoorie, a lovely hill station. And the snows were down. So, of course, my car would get stuck, but I had a very faithful driver. But whatever it was, I'll take Priya Bali up there, give her a nice hot coffee, bring her back. So she thought I was the best of human beings. And I think she had some influence over a younger sister who also agreed that this boy is very good, but the girl was not very agreeable at that point of time. Anyway, we continued. I came back. When I went to my aunt in Bombay, they were very upset that I was wanting to marry outside the Brahmin clan. So she introduced me to a whole lot of ladies and their mothers in Bombay. They all belong to the Port Trust and, multi-millionaires, because Bombay is the richest city of the country. Even then it was. I'm talking of about 1956. And they're all in business, or they were in, high-end money-making in Bombay, very huge buildings. And I used to be introduced to these young ladies whom they brought. And yes, their mothers would sit down and look at me and say, all right, son, come and sit here and talk to me. What do you do for a living? So I would tell them, I'm a captain in the army. Oh, you're in the army. They get up and walk away straight away because they had no intention, no intention of getting their very rich daughters married to some poor army chap. So I told my aunt, I said, there you are. It's not going to work. So now, after my leave, I got back to Kanpur, to my regiment. And we had to go to field firing. Field firing is the way you take a whole regiment to a long range where you can fire your tank guns. Now that was in Babina. Now Babina is in a place near Jhansi. Jhansi is in UP. And I think it will be about 3 or 4 hours drive from Kanpur to go to Jhansi. Running of Jhansi and all that.
Yes.
There was a running of Jhansi fort also in Jhansi.
Yes.
And about 18 kilometers from Jhansi Babina was only a military station, mostly bare, and there were huge areas which were free of habitation, which was converted into a field firing range, where you could get a range, because when you fire tank guns, it's not only where the shell lands that is the problem, but the shell ricochets. And so you have to clear a large amount of area of civilian population. Otherwise, if there are villages and things like that, then, they might get hurt. So, and if anybody does get hurt, then you have to pay a lot of compensation, which the government pays. But tank training makes it essential for you to fire your guns and machine guns. So we went there. Now it was early 1957. And then in Babina, we had what is known as an armored brigade. There were 3 tank regiments who also were located there because they had the field firing ranges next door. And they were all heavier tanks, Sherman tanks and so on. And there was an artillery regiment, which was SP. That means you have an artillery gun on tracks. 34 Maratha anti-tank regiment, right? So they were all there in Babina. And we came onto the ranges, we camped over there in tents, and we were firing a small little gun with a little light tank called the Honey. And then I was asked by my commanding officer to report to the Armored Brigade headquarters on postage. So I was very surprised. I said, look, yeah, I'm the adjutant of the regiment. You're just getting rid of me from the regiment like that. They said, the Armored Brigade headquarters has particularly asked for you by name to come and join their staff. So the posting orders had arrived from Army headquarters. When I went there, I realized that the brigade commander was then a chap called Brigadier Hari Badwar, Harish Chandar Badwar. He's a very theatrical man, tall with a long walrus mustache, and he belonged to Hodson's House. And he was commanding the brigade as a brigade commander. Later, he became a major general and commanded the armored division also in Jhansi. Armored division was in headquarters was in Jhansi. So I ended up there, and I found that his brigade major is the senior staff officer, the major's rank, was a person who'd been my instructor in Ahmednagar when I was doing my bios course. And then later he came to know me when I was doing my gunnery course. See? So because he was a tactical instructor, I had done a squadron commander's course where I had done tactics, the Ahmednagar ranges, etc., and he was my instructor. So he suggested my name because I'd done very well in all these courses. That is a bright chap. If you want, they had a vacancy of a captain in the A&Q branch. That means the supply and logistics branch. I would be number 2 over there because the chap in charge was a major. And so I was appointed there. So when I went for my interview to the brigade commander, Hari Badwa, very theatrical chap, got up and welcomed me and said, sit down, I'm very happy to have you. So I said, sir, he said, I hope you're very happy to join this excellent, it's the only armored brigade of the country. And to join the staff, you learn all about the 3 or 4 regiments and how to handle them in battle. I said, sir, I'm a bit upset because I've already done quartermaster, and I was telling my commanding officer that I don't want to get stuck in the administrative branches of the army. I want to learn more about the business of actual fighting, the operational command, as one might say. He said, all right, what we'll do is that you be a staff officer with the administrative staff, but when we go on exercise and we do battle practice, we'll get you into the general staff branch where you help in running the planning and operations. This is all right with that deal. I put a smile on my face and said I was happy, which I was not. But nevertheless, you got to obey orders and do what you're required to do. So I had an interesting experience since I was there for about 3 years in this brigade headquarters as a staff captain. I saw 3 brigadiers changing in front of me. And I learned a lot because in the exercises, the question was you're using 3 tank regiments with the brigade headquarters. The brigadier was always in a jeep running around, meeting his command and saying, the whole thing was run by the brigade major and his staff. His staff comprised captain who was the GSO 3 operations, the general staff officer, grade 3 operations. And I used to join this chat, and we had a control vehicle where we could communicate with all the regiments to tell them what to do. And I learned very fast that in a tank versus tank battle with, say, about 150 tanks in the field of laws, opposing an enemy by enemy tanks at a smaller level, of course, they didn't have that many. But I understood how to handle 3 tank regiments in one go. See? You understood when things were wrong, how to do various movements to get out of a difficult spot, or to maneuvers that are going to get advantage to you over the enemy. Also, the enemy tanks were light tanks from the Central India Horse. That's also a reconnaissance regiment. And the chap who was commanding them was the chap called Lieutenant Colonel Sarkar. He's a Bengali. And he was also an instructor of mine in Ahmednagar in the tactical side. And then when I was in the gunnery wing, he was going to take over command from becoming a major. He was coming up to lieutenant colonel to take over command of his regiment. And he came to the armament group, that's the gun group in Ahmednagar, to our boss there to say that he wants an officer to train him in spare time, about an hour a day, to bring him back to his knowledge of gunnery and that functioning and type of weapons, etc. Since he was going to command, and he'd been on a teaching staff for some years, so he wanted to brush up. So I was appointed to teach him. I realized he's a very, very clever man. So with the result, I said, I mean, very sharp man in his head. And Bengalis are, I'm told, very sharp. Do you agree with that?
It's good to know. Yeah, that's usually
Very sharp,
the
very
understanding.
clever.
Yeah. Yes.
You say, what is agriculture? Agriculture is in Punjab. What is the boriculture? That's in Chandigarh. You make a lot of plants. What is culture? You either go to Bengal or to Madras. Two places where there is culture. Anyway, so I worked very hard to train him, to explain him the theory behind why certain ammunition and gun firing techniques function. Tank warfare is very similar to naval warfare because you're like a ship. And how you attack an enemy is very well laid down. And so I explained all this and the principles behind it. So very impressed. He said, look, you're a very sharp chap. So all right. He gave me a list of books that I should read to improve my knowledge. He says, you know, in the military, you don't just study your normal stuff, you study far beyond that. If you want to get anywhere in this military, because you have to be far above the normal person. That requires a lot of hard work to study. So it's not only tactical study, but culture study, because in the military, you have to go to other people's countries. You must know why they are there, why are they fighting, what makes them tick. If you think of Pakistan and you think of Nepal and you think of China, what makes them tick? See, you have to understand that. And if you do that, then you have a more generous human mind. Not a question of defeating people, it's a question of bringing them on your side and not fighting.
Right.
The best art of generalship, Nivedita, it's not fight at all, but achieve your aim without a bullet. You don't have to bash up cities and kill thousands of human beings. That any bloody fool could do. You require a lot of mind games and culture to understand how, of course, the political party will tell you some aim that has to be achieved, but that can be achieved in so many ways, isn't it? So, all right. He gave me a whole list of books which I studied. Books which covered from philosophy to culture to sex, everything. All right, I did all that. And at the same time, he kept an eye on. He was in Armored Division. He first commanded the Armored Reconnaissance Regiment, which was Central India Horse, Light Regiment. And after that, he went on Armored Div staff. He had a very good equation with me. I was only a captain and he was a lieutenant. Right. I must tell you later in life that when we went into East Pakistan in 1971 war, we had a thing called the Mukti Bahini.
Yeah, right. Of course.
Which were refugees from the depredations of the Pakistan army in East Pakistan against the Bengali population. They had run into India in millions, 9 million of them, right? And so from among them, we created groups who were ready to go back and fight for their land, trained them. Some of them were ex-army also, but others were civilians who were trained how to handle weapons and how to handle a compass, how to handle maps, so that they could, and how to handle bombs, so that they could go behind the enemy line and blow up the odd bridge or something, and fire at passing vehicles and all that, create a little mayhem behind the enemy lines. Jimmy Sarkar was the man placed in charge in Calcutta of this training of the Mukti Bahini. See, I happened to visit Calcutta. I must have been a full colonel. I happened to visit Calcutta for something. And I met this chap. He No, my nickname is Titch. He said, hey, hi, Titch. So I looked at him. He looked like one of those road sweeping bhangis, you know. So I said, just a minute. Salam Chimi Sarkar. I said, you're not dressed like an officer, you know, your beard is hanging out and
Yeah.
looking filthy, ragged clothes. He said, I'm Mufti Baini, so I have to dress like that. I'm a
Oh.
refugee. Right? So he was a lieutenant general at that time. Anyway, he did a very good job of work. So this is the association that you start from your young days with young people of your batch, plus many who are much senior. Close association with in any walk of life is a help for you to progress. Anyway, so I learned all this in the armored brigade. There was amongst the three tank regiments and also the uh, Maratha anti-tank regiment, which is on tracks. So it's like a tank, but it's not got a turret and all. That's got a big gun on top to kill tank. There was also a motor battalion. We didn't have armored personal carriers in those days. They were on trucks, but they were supposed to follow behind the tank columns to take over territory that we had captured, or to assist in crossing bridges or villages, or assist in by getting on foot infantry. You'll notice in Ukraine, one of the faults of the, I would suggest, of the Russian attack is that their tanks are not accompanied by foot infantry. When you get
Yeah.
into,
Yeah.
you will get into a jungle where you can't see for a distance. Chaps are hiding behind trees or hiding behind a boulder can shoot you up with these anti-tank weapons which are shoulder controlled or handheld, which America is sending in, and America and Germany are sending to Ukraine. So when you get into a city, it's you never put tanks in a city. In the Indian Army, we avoid cities completely. We allow infantry to go into the city. We cut it off from outside with the tanks so that no supplies and things can get in. But we leave it to the infantry to go from house to house and clear the thing. The Russians seem to be putting their tanks which get blown up because somebody is hiding behind a building, somebody is hiding behind a whole broken building, if you like. You fire the thing, you're a sitting duck if you're not accompanied by infantry. So that's one of their major faults. Perhaps they thought it was going to be a walkover,
Right.
but it didn't realize that those guys are going to stand up and fight.
Right.
Anyway, that is what's scoring up. And I must say something more to you while I'm thinking about it. That, in the Western world, they love destroying cities. Americans went into Iraq, they destroyed Baghdad, this ancient city. They destroyed Basra, they killed millions of people, millions of children, millions of women who all became refugees. We seem to forget that when they curse Mr. Putin. But the fact of the issue is that so the Russians do the same. During World War I and World War II, they used to use bombers and things to destroy cities.
Yeah.
The idea here being is that they want to destroy the whole country's method of fighting a war, with the factories, the people who go there, and horrify the public there by killing innocent men, women, and children who are not even soldiers, so that the government is forced to give up. But in the India-Pakistan wars, we went through the 47, 49 war in Kashmir. We went through the 65 war and the 71 war. Now recently we went to the Kargil war. We never attacked cities, neither did they. We fought each other, the soldiers. So maybe there's a little honor among thieves, as one might say. A little style here. You don't destroy infrastructure in cities. And there I'm surprised to see they want to flatten everything. They make a lot of money to rebuild. They send the contractors after that to make a lot of money. Anyway, it's a very nasty method of fighting where you want to kill innocent people to get your way. Having said that, I met the motor battalion CO. He's a chap called Prakash Gareva. It's, if I'm not mistaken, the 10 Dogra motor battalion supporting the Ahmad Brigade. And very interesting because since I was in the administration staff, I was very interested to look at all aspects of administration, including medical cover,
Okay.
medical supplies. Uh, for instance, you're getting milk. Why is it full of water? It should be proper milk. You see, you're getting rations, which should be of a certain size. A potato must be that big. Why is it only that big? You know, what happens is that the contractors who are in touch with civil contractors who produce vegetables and meats and things like that, they don't mind passing a little money to the guy who's buying to accept poorer quality of goods. So the troops are given something less than what they are authorized, and the government is paying the full amount. So that is one of my tasks. I noticed that in the Sikh parade, you keep a touch of which regiments have got too many Jawans, that is soldiers, reporting sick. Because if a man is reporting sick most of the time, that shows that the morale of the troops
Right.
is not too good because they tend to avoid normal duty. So I noticed that the Sikh parade of this 10 motor battalion, 10 Dogra motor battalion, was the largest in the whole Babina cantonment. Uh, Whereas in the other armored regiments, it's a very small sector. So I decided to go and attend the Sikh parade to see why that should be so. I met the doctor who had been advised by the commanding officer how to run the Sikh parade. The doctor was a young captain, very pleasant fellow. And anybody who came, or his wife came, or his children came, they all came to him because he had a very good method of talking. The bedside manner, which normally military doctors don't have. They just give you the medicine, tell you to get along. Whereas in civil, you pay a lot of money because there's a bit of bedside manner, chap hears what you have to say and teach you nicely. You feel good about it. Though he may not be such a good doctor. After all, military doctors are very good. But they don't have time to have too much of a bedside manner. This doctor had a hell of a technique. So all the families and the children and even the Jawans really loved this. Somebody should say, I've got a headache. And he should tell his compounder, lal wala dawai de do. So on top, he had big jars, red colored liquid and blue colored liquid and green colored liquid. So I asked him after the Sikh parade was over, I said, Doctor, you're doing damn well. Everybody's coming here. I noticed that people from other regiments are coming here. So what are these medicines that you're giving which seem to cure everybody? He said, sir, that is just water with color and a bit of sugar in it. In other words, many of the ailments are here in the brain. Just give them something, like the doctor, you get cured because the mind is so strong. The interesting point to understand. If your mind is strong and at peace, your body is healthy. If your mind is agitated about something, in order to get some medicine from your favorite doctor, you feel better and you get cured. Is the medicine curing you, or are you curing yourself? It's a good question to try and understand. More about Prakash Krewal later in life, which I'll explain to you when I went into the 65 war. So these are the people, interesting people I met. Hari Badwar was very interesting. He went away after a year and we got a chap called K.C. Khanna. Now this name has been mentioned to you earlier. Brigadier K.C. Khanna was the man whose younger brother went into 16 Cavalry because of his request. Right. When I insisted on joining and they wanted to know why I wanted to join. Okay? So this is Avinash Khanna's elder brother. He's a very fine officer. He's a very fine lady as his wife. And he's a very good brigade commander. And I got to know him very well. And got to know him right till he retired. He retired as a major general. Even when he died at the age of 94, he was in defense colony, so he used to keep meeting. My wife Shruti also, after I married her, became very fond of that family. So the 3rd Brigade commander I met there was a Brigadier Har Prasad. Now he was the same chap who was commanding my regiment when I passed out from the Indian Military Academy in 1950. He came to receive me with the Captain Dhar, who carried my badge and all that. He received me. And he's a very fine officer. He retired as the Vice Chief of the Army Staff. More about him later. And he originally was in a regiment called the Guides Cavalry, which went to Pakistan in the division, right? So he then joined 16th Cavalry and commanded it when I joined. He had taken over in 1949 and I joined in 1950, and about 1952 or so, he was posted out. And Lieutenant Colonel K.K. Singh took over. So I got to know him also very well, since he came as my brigade commander. And his wife, Shobha Prasad, very well known to all of us in 16 Cavalry because she was the CO's wife. There were no other ladies in the regiment, and all of us young officers were madly in love with this lady because she's so nice. So when a man has a loving partner, everybody's happy. He's happy and everybody else is happy. See, so talking about marital life, I did have these examples. And I said to myself that there's no point in getting married unless you have a woman who is, as your partner, who is entirely loving and loyal, which you also. And the idea here is to live the whole life with that, and no question of running around here and there and giving a bad example to your children, right? Uh, I'll take you back to the Garden of Eden. Have you studied the Bible?
Yes, I have actually.
All right.
Yes,
And the Garden of Eden,
yes.
there was Adam, and then there was Eve. Adam was alone. And the story goes that he appealed to the Lord when he saw various animals with their partners. He said, come on, Lord, what about me? I also need a partner. So the story goes something like this. The Lord said, look, Adam, I have made you in my image. If I make Eve your female companion, this is a very difficult thing to produce. So the story goes that it took the Lord 6 days to create the world and the universe. And on the 7th day, he rested. That's the Sabbath. Then it took him 6 more days to create Adam in his image. And on the 7th day, he rested. Then he asked for Adam's help in producing Eve. But this is a very difficult proposition to make. Something so unique, not seen out earlier in the whole world. So it took Adam and the Lord 6 days of hard effort to create Eve. And since then, neither Adam nor the Lord have rested.
Rested.
So now this is a very interesting specimen. I decided that I at least must give full rein to a spouse to be herself and to do the things she wishes. Now my brigade commander was Hari Badwar at that time. It took me time to get my lady in Jammu to agree to marital union. I was only writing to her. Mark you, when I was in Kanpur, before I reached Babina, Kanpur was only 40 minutes run by jeep to Lucknow. And we were all members of the Muhammad Bagh Club in Lucknow, a very famous club, a military club. So I'd written to her to say that, look, you're in IT college and I'm in Kanpur, so why can't we meet? So she wrote back, oh, no, not at all. I'm busy with my exams and I'm very involved and, studying and I'm participating in plays and this, that, the other, and I've got no time. So you must certainly not visit me here. Now I had a friend, my batchmate, called Krishan Tulli, very fine officer. He joined the Signals Corps, and he was a tall, handsome fellow. And he was selected as the ADC to the governor of UP in Lucknow. Now the governor of UP goes for a holiday to Nainital in the summer, just like the British governors used to do. Live in government house in Nainital. So Krishan Tulli ended up in Nainital. Now he was sweet on one of the girls of IT college. Her name was Pimi. Krishan Tuli was about 6'2" tall. So the Pimi was also about 5'10" tall. Nice tall lady. And that was his girlfriend. He was chasing her. And she had a group of friends of which Swaroop was also part. So this chap rang me up because he rang me up from Nainital. Yeah, I'm here, damn good. And my girl Pimi is here and all that sort of thing. So he knew that I was chasing a girl called Swaroop Barkatran. He said, Swaroop Barkatran also enjoying a holiday in Nainital. This is when she'd written to me that I'm very busy doing my exam. Please don't come in. So I said, well, this is now a problem. So I decided to pay more attention to the question of cavalry tactics. You see, you get to know the aunt, Priya Bali, I got to know her very well. Then I found out that she has two other sisters. There was a girl called Preeti, about 3 years younger, and a girl called Suniti, nicknamed Gudia, about 5 years younger than my girl. So I came to know that Preeti, the middle one, was a very studious girl, and she was studying to be a doctor and all that sort of thing. So I sent her 2, 3 books as a present to say just for you to read. But she greatly appreciated and sent a letter of thanks. Then for Guria, who was more like Supi, she was more happy-go-lucky type. So I sent her the whole year's reader's digest. Little stories, you see.
Okay.
She was very thankful for that. So I managed to get what was known as the fifth column. The fifth column is the intelligence column in the enemy camp, where your name and thing is, kept high. Eventually, I found that after about a year's correspondence, that she wrote to me, she said, look, the life is not easy. And I'm afraid I must tell you, because we've been corresponding for almost a year, that this marriage is not going to work out.
Okay.
My father's already arranged a marriage with a banker's son, who's also in banking, and they're very well off. And, because they're very well off and all that sort of thing, my father is very keen. I should marry there. Matter has been decided. So that's it. So I wrote back. And you have to be very careful what you write when something like this comes, because it's a rejection. I wrote back. I said, that's fine. You have to do whatever you think is right. And I appreciate that. You can marry anyone you like. But please remember that I am waiting. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, I'm there. We shall be friends. We shall be friends, even if we don't get married, right? So she was very appreciative of that. Now, about a year or two later, when I was still in Babina as a staff captain, this must have been about late 1957. I got a whole packet from my wife, or rather from my girl.
Yeah.
So I said, there you are. She's returning all my letters, because the matter is off.
Okay.
Instead of which, she had made a jersey for me, and she sent that. The letter saying, I accept.
Oh my.
I wanted to know why. Why have you changed your view? She says, because your parents refused to think of any dowry. The dowry system, though it is illegal now, in those days, there's a lot of dowry business. My father had 2 daughters and 3 sons. He had told all of us that dowry is not acceptable. Neither will this family accept any dowry for the 3 sons, nor will be given any dowry for the 2 girls. So therefore, if you wish to get married, but no dowry. We don't sell or buy a woman. See? That's my fault. So we had said that to everybody. No doubt. So she said, your family doesn't want dowry, but that family wants so many lakhs as dowry. So she said, I told my dad, I'm not going to be sold. I refused to marry her. So that's it. So I was the black option, which was accepted. So my brigadier at that time was Hari Badwar, called me to his house. You see, you made a decision to get married. It's a very difficult proposition. The first thing is never give your account to your wife.
Oh,
She'll
okay.
get to the whole lot and finish it. Buy jewelry and saris and things like that to become a pauper. As it is, you're not very rich in the army. And so my advice to you is, his wife used to listen to all this, say nothing. So says, you will not give her any checkbook or anything and no money to me.
Okay.
I said, okay, sir. But when the engagement was done, I sent her checkbooks as equal member of my accounts. And I said, whatever I have is yours. You have to look after the money and then give me whatever you think is necessary for me.
Okay.
In those days, as a captain, you didn't get much of a salary. I mean, I only got about 500 or 600 rupees a month. Of course, the value of the rupee was much more. And by the time I'd sorted out a ring for her, I told you a story of Rawalpindi in 1947, early 47, when I had gone to the home of Vimla Das. She was the wife of a major
Right.
Das, who later became engineer in chief. He was only a major of engineers, knew my brother very well, because senior to my brother.
Right.
And Vimla was his wife from IT college. She'd been the president of IT college.
Right.
She was a great friend of my sister, who also became president of IT college a year or two after Vimla. And she's the one who had made chicken soup. If you recollect, I went to distribute the chicken soup. I was only 17. And I came back and said, Vimlaji, 5 of those ladies, including my mother, are vegetarians, so they want veggies. So she took a bottle of tomato sauce, poured it into the chicken soup, made it red. She said, now give vegetarian soup to everybody. And they all enjoyed. And in fact, they said to Vimla जी ये सूप हमने कभी नहीं टेस्ट किया इतना फर्स्ट क्लास बना आपका कैसे बना what is the recipe that's the same lady she and I were very good friends I told her Vimla I'm getting married she said what do you want I said I want to make a ring so I designed the ring so she said you take a few days leave and come to Delhi and she took me to Dariba Kalan this old Delhi
Right.
where she ordered 5 diamonds in a little S formation which I designed and he made it and I paid $600 for it. Small diamonds. And in those days, the value of rupees was more. It was only about 8 rupees to the pound in those days. And it's now about 75, right? So I sent that ring for my lady. And that was it. So they came, father came with a lot of fruit and all that. And I took some leave from my go and get married to a lady. So in February 1958, we got married. We went with a barat from Delhi. My father was in Delhi. And he had just retired, in fact. And we were living in my elder sister's house, Rattington Road in Delhi, very nice house. He was a brigadier in the army. Sorry, he was at that time about a colonel in the army, posted at army headquarters. So we went on a train from here to Jammu, and he had a whole carriage booked for the Barat. So about 30 of us landed up there. The chief minister of Punjab was a chap called Pratap Singh Gairon. Now, Pratap Singh Gairon was one of the best chief ministers Punjab has ever seen. And his chief engineer was a chap called Devan Chand Sharma. Now, Devan Chand Sharma was an engineer, and he was chief engineer of Punjab under Pratap Singh Gairon. He knew father very well because they were buddies from a long time. So he said, if you're coming to Punjab, which Pathankot was Punjab, I shall lay on. Your transport from Pathankot, because there was no train to Jammu, so Pathankot laid on about 10 cars and luxury buses and all that for the Barat to go to Jammu. He laid on in Jammu, the PWD circuit house is set up for us to stay and received us in Pathankot, gave us a mighty breakfast and we all ended up there. We spent about 2 days in Jammu. Indian marriages being what they are, the whole Baratis came outside the place where Dr. Badkadam and his family were residing in a place called Gandhi Bhavan. And there was a huge club there. The Jammu club was there was a big area in front of it. So the Bharat came there and they all went in for what you know is the Milni. And I was left alone on top of this horse because we'd come from the circuit house in a car and then got onto the mare, the ghodi, which was all decked up. And I was supposed to be the dula and with a huge, sira and a sword and all that sort of thing. Now, I, being a cavalry officer, knew how to ride, so I got the stirrups adjusted and I was controlling that mare properly. So the chap was holding it in front. I said, you don't have to hold it.
Yeah.
I'm a cavalry officer, I know how to manage this mare. So we left it. I had a fellow from Sindh Horse, another regiment, who was about a year junior to me, called Ravi Mani.
Yeah.
They were posted in Ranbir Singhpura, which is south of Jammu Airport, right? This Sindh Horse regiment. So all their officers landed up as guests for this wedding. You see, because cavalry chap getting married, so they said, my regiment was not there. So they sent a JSO and some men to see me off, as they say, dressed with the, ceremonial dress with lances and all that. But Sindh House officers were landed up with their wives, and Ravi Mani was a bachelor. He said, come on, I was chatting with me. So I suddenly turned the horse's neck towards the gate, and I gave it the heel and I started trotting off. So he ran after me, caught the rein. He said, where the hell are you going? I said, look, I'm getting cold feet, getting married, getting stuck for the rest of my life. I better get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Let those people enjoy the party.
Oh my.
Leave me going and let me get out from here. He said, nothing doing. We have come here for the wedding and you bloody well will get married before you go. Now, of course, I didn't tell this to my wife. He caught hold of my rein and brought the horse back to the correct position. Then eventually, after Milli done, we got off and I was ushered forward and there were these three sisters. And I got a bit confused because I was wearing that sera as to which is my girl out of these three sisters. They're all similar looking. Anyway, suddenly I realized that my wife was at the back, then the har banaying and all that. Anyway, we got married, we came back to Delhi and we had a reception at Rattendon Road for father's friends and my friends who all came in large numbers. So this marriage took place and Colonel and Mrs. Harprasad, who were posted in Delhi at that time, they both came for the wedding. Mrs. Harprasad gave advice to both of us. She says, I'm very happy to see you two married. Wish you lots of luck for the future. Don't ever fall too much in love.
Okay.
So I asked her, Mrs. HP, what do you mean exactly? She said, if you fall too much in love and it's not so on the other side, you get walked over. So I don't know if that was correct advice, but whatever it is, that was an interesting point. I mean, it's a Hollywood falling in love and romantic tales. You do that, but when you first meet man and boy, man and girl, yeah, the first impressions are important every time. But there's a sexual innuendo. Falling in love is not wanted by ourselves. Falling in love is for lifetime. Right? I don't know if you read Shakespeare. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. For love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. This is Shakespeare in one of his sonnets. Ah, no, it's a never fixed mark, like on high, usually reference to the North Pole star.
Right.
Fixes on high, and the star to everyone bring back. It's going through the storms. That means you will have storms in your marriage. But you have to maintain that direction. Mr. Polestar gives you. So, love is not love, as he says, which alters when it alteration finds.
Okay.
Or bends, that means it changes, with the remover to remove. When the man has gone away or the girl has gone away, you forget about it. Huh? Anyway, that is Shakespeare. Now we went back to Garden of Eden.
Okay.
There was this Eve and there was Adam. What was this business about the apple? The poisoned apple. The Lord said, don't taste this. And they had a servant who whispered in Eve's ear, don't be a bloody fool. It's a fruit after all. It's very good fruit and very tasty. Why don't you take a bite? Women being women, she told Adam, look, that fool of an old man called God has told you not to eat that fruit. After all, why did he have the fruit if you're not supposed to eat it? So are you not man enough to take a bite out of this apple? So he said, no, but the Lord said not to eat it, so I don't think I should. She said, come on. He's not even here. He's not even watching. And the serpent is leaving the thing open for you to eat this fruit. So Adam took a bite of this fruit and got stuck here. It's the Adam's apple. Women don't have it.
Right.
Women have advised the man to eat it first. So the man eat it and he got stuck here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the Lord came and said, well, you've eaten the forbidden fruit. Now you get out of the Garden of Eden. Instead of having everything free here, free food, free everything, and a beautiful place to live in, you go out into the desert and see if you can survive there. He threw them out, right? And he was cursing Adam all the time. You idiot, why did you eat that fruit? Look at our condition, how we have to live now. He said, you're the one who advised me. She said, but you don't have to take my advice. Okay. I gave you the advices, but for you who made the decision. See? It's an interesting tale between man and woman. Now, this is the explanation given by autobiography of a yogi by Yogananda.
Right.
He explains this from his viewpoint. He says, this is not the forbidden fruit with the sex outside marriage. That means that once you are married, you have to stick to that. You don't, like one of the commandments of the Lord said in the Old Testament, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
Right.
That means you are with your woman, you stay with her, you don't look at other people. So that's mostly the man because he's got the predator eye, you see. So he says that is it. And the explanation of this is very interesting because there's a chap called Reverend Moon. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a South Korean pastor who was accepted by United Nations as the peace movement of United Nations, accepted as the peace movement, how to get peace. He said the first thing to get peace is to stick to your marriage vows and not give a bad example to your children who then start predating all over the place. There's no discipline left, there's no sense of loyalty to a single person or to the children that come because the woman is running somewhere and the man is running somewhere and the children learn the same. And recollect Reverend Moon's group called the Peace Commission, of which I'm a peace ambassador, by the way. The main instructor was an American. He says, my country is the worst. We are predators. We have no character and conduct as far as this is concerned. And with the result, we act like that all over the world. So that's the story of this. Now, Nivedita, we go on from here. I rejoined my regiment, that 16 Light Cavalry. It was in Kapurthala at that time, near Jalandhar, in 1961. Of course, my wife was with me. We had a baby, my son. We had some sort of a competition in our regiment because the first youngster who got married in my regiment is a chap called Harimohan Dhodi, who was our adjutant, very good friend, who would replace me in Mizoram also when I was given leave to go to Dehradun to meet my girl. And Harimohan Dhodi got married to a lady who was an advertising group from Bombay, very forward propulsion lady. And their first child was born about 10 and a half months after marriage. So he turned down to the regiment and said, look, chaps, I've set the example for all of you, 10 and a half months first baby. There was a competition as to whoever got married as to how long it takes for the first baby. So I think I won that competition because I got my first child 9.5 months after marriage. That was Vikram, my son, who unfortunately became a doctor, and he lost him to COVID last December. November, December. He's 63 years old, but he's all right. The advantage is how long you have to live. if you are able to live and you got married and you got children and you've got grandchildren, that you had one child, and you've gone through life, at least the soul has got that much of training, see, of how to function in this world. My brother Som, for instance, he got killed in action and got a Paramveer Chakra, yes. But he was only 24. He hadn't even got married. He'd been to war in Burma. He came from there, went to war in Kashmir and got killed. Yes, he's a hero and he's a national hero. So we won't have anything more to say about that. But did he get a chance to live life? No. He hasn't had the experience.
Right.
So as the philosophy says, you get born in this earth to go through the experience of life with its ups and downs, with its difficulties, with its storms. How you overcome this? It's a question of whether you're man enough or not, or woman enough or not. Do you have the character and conduct to stand up and face it, overcome, as they say, rather than succumb to the difficulties that were thrown in your way? And many times you hear that the Lord said that any bloody fool can live a life, but we want men of character and conduct and women of character and conduct who face their problems and overcome them. So unless problems are thrown at you, how do we test you? So if you had a simple life with no problems, it wouldn't be much of an adventurous life at all. So you have to have death, you have to have injury, you have to have stormy sessions with your near ones and dear ones, even brothers and sisters fight. But you have to overcome that and make sure that what you speak is not offensive, because many times you can't eat your words. What the tongue sends out cannot be retrieved. Therefore, you have to have a controlled speech. The hurt of a speech is tremendous. It can never be cured.